matters. Pastoral care for all couples and families. This is not the first time the Presbyterian Church and the Christian Communion and society in the United States, or even the global conversation, has been about who gets to fall in love, who gets to be recognized as a couple, who gets the opportunity to get married. I trust you're familiar with, of course, two remarkable people. Richard and Mildred Loving. It's a story from the late 1950s, and it's hard to imagine that there were laws on the books that did not allow heterosexually oriented couples of different races to marry. They were called miscegenation laws. On the 40th anniversary of the Supreme Court decision that struck down those bad, unjust, immoral, and I believe unchristian kinds of barriers and laws, Mildred said this: "I am still not a political person, but I am proud that Richard's and my name is on a court case that can help reinforce the love, the commitment, the fairness, and the family that so many people, black or white, young or old, gay or straight, seek in life. I support the freedom to marry for all." And listen to what she said. "That's what loving, capital L, and loving, small l, are all about." That's what loving and loving are all about. Four individuals will begin to speak about their experience, their hopes for our church. There are, as you know, overtures about marriage equality being debated right now, this very minute, in Committee 13. We're so grateful to have Reverend Heidi Peterson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church in Kansas City, Missouri; Reverend David Ensign, pastor of Clarendon Presbyterian Church in Clarendon, Virginia; Reverend Will McGarvey, pastor of Community Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh, California; and Eric Thomas, soon to be one of those reverends, student at Johnson C. Smith Theological Seminary at the International Theological Center, Atlanta, Georgia. So they will share some of their thoughts and reflections, and then there are a couple other folks that I'm going to invite to come forward, and then we'll move into a time of question and answer. Heidi.
Damas primeras. I'm the gender diversity panel. I wore the rest. I am a teaching elder in Kansas City, Missouri. It is not possible in the state where I minister for same-gender loving couples to be married in a civil, legal way. It is possible to drive about 2.5 hours north to Iowa to do it. I've been ordained for going on 29 years and have done a lot of weddings, and I've done in the last many years a lot of civil unions. And what I told Bryce, the co-moderator, more like last night when I was talking to him about this, is that I really don't do anything different in the counseling of same-gender loving couples than I do with heterosexual couples when they come to me and say that they want to join their lives in some way or other, either a religious ceremony or a or a civil ceremony, and they only come to me pretty much if they're members of our church family and want their relationship with one another recognized in the context of their faith community. There are some, I used to, years ago, give multiple choice surveys to couples who want to get married and see if they were compatible. And then over time I discovered that when people came to me because their marriage was in distress, it really wasn't usually because one liked Danish modern and one liked mission and stuff. The kinds of stuff that was in those surveys. So now we just talk, and we spend a lot of time talking about their faith, talking about before we actually have the ceremony, what the character of the other person and the quality of their relationship is that makes them convicted that forsaking all others, this is the person with whom they want to share their intimate life forever, come what may. And to pass my test, it has to be something more than, we both agree that our favorite movie is all about Eve. Or our favorite song is Dancing Queen. Sorry, guys, but same-gender loving couples, there is a question that I ask them to reflect on that I don't ordinarily ask heterosexual couples, and it is to talk to me and with one another about the stresses and joys that they experience in their families, in their church life, and in society that they perceive are unique to their relationship as a same-gender loving couple. And the other thing that I always talk to people about is whether they expect that they will have children. And one of the really important things for them to know and to think about is that in the state of Missouri, it is not legal in an adoption for the two persons doing the adoption to be the same gender. So one of them has to be the parent, and the other has to be the legal guardian. And that's something that often requires a lot more sussing out than the coming together in a civil union. Good.
Thank you.
I'm going to touch on some of the same things that Heidi did, but since she noted that she's wearing a skirt, I got to show you my socks. My wife is a crazy knitter, and I am the beneficiary. It's wonderful. I told her I was going to do that, and she didn't believe me. I suppose there is something appropriate about coming out at a more light event, no matter what it is that you're going to disclose, skirts or socks or whatever. So by way of full disclosure, I am a pastor in National Castle Presbyterian, but I too am in a jurisdiction where same-gender marriage is not yet legal. Last time I checked, Virginia was further away from marriage equality than it is from the District of Columbia. So I wondered why Michael asked me to be on this panel, and I thought at first that maybe he was hoping that I would provide a list of colleagues in National Capital who have performed same-gender marriages to take some pressure off my neighbor and our new co-moderator. But I can't provide that because frankly I have no idea. I do know that pastors in the Virginia suburbs and in the Maryland suburbs can, with a modicum of DC hoop jumping, be authorized in the District of Columbia to perform marriages there. But that's not really at all what I wanted to talk with you about. Because about 5 or 6 years ago, Clarendon adopted a policy that precludes its pastor from signing legal documents for any couple. And it's a policy that over the years I've come to think has got a great deal to recommend to the larger church. We did this because the church is not in the wedding business, we're in the Jesus business. So these days when I talk with couples, whether they are straight couples or same-gender couples, we spend a lot of time talking about Jesus, which is in my sweet spot as pastor. We talk about what it means to follow Jesus in the context of our deepest relationships. We talk about what it means that God loves us and has made a rainbow covenant promise to be faithful to us, and how that love shapes and informs the commitments that we make to each other and the covenants and promises that we make to one another. And we talk about the church's role with respect to blessing those promises that we make to have and to hold. Soon after we made that decision as a church, a young woman came to worship with us on a Sunday morning. And after worship and conversation, she told me that she was there checking us out on behalf of a lesbian couple who wasn't really sure that all are welcome meant all. And she wanted to make sure that it was a safe place for her friends. She picked up a flyer that described our policy on marriages, and she talked to me, and she talked to some members of the congregation, and realized that it would in fact be a safe place for her friends. And a little more than a year after that, I was blessed to bless the union of Heather and Lisa, and sometime real soon I expect to get to baptize Ava, their daughter. I will never forget their wedding day. It was a beautiful spring Virginia afternoon at a gorgeous Virginia winery. I'll plug the Virginia wine scene. Come on in. And after the service, I was approached by Lisa's brother, who I had been forewarned was not entirely comfortable with his sister's sexuality and had a lot of questions and concerns about the whole same-sex union thing. And I was a bit wary when he told me that on the ride up from his Southwest Virginia home, his daughter had asked him, "Daddy, is this service going to be on the news?" And I chuckled and said, "Thank God, no." Really thinking what an incredible hassle that would be. And he cut me off, and he said, "It should be. It should be so that everybody could see how ordinary and normal this is." And I understood that it was, a profound and holy moment. And what he was really saying to me was, I love my sister. I want her to be happy. And what I came away from that experience with was a real pastoral concern for my colleagues in ministry, because I want all of them to be able to experience the same holy moments and the same ordinary, normal, everyday part of being in the Jesus business. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing as a church. And part of the Jesus business is the wondrous opportunity to walk with couples into the deepest and most intimate promises and commitments that they will make. Thanks.
Great. Hello, I'm Eric Thomas, and I am a senior at the Johnson C. Smith Theological Seminary in Georgia. And I've been asked by to speak on behalf of a seminarian's experience at the General Assembly with regard to marriage equality. And I'm not sure if seminary prepares you for General Assembly, or if General Assembly prepares you for seminary. And so I guess I'll start with my hope. My overarching hope is that the Presbyterian church and the church with the big C would just be what it says that it is. Would just be what it says that it is. As a senior, I prepared for ordination examinations, and we're marking down the classes that we've taken. And we learn things like ecclesia, both in our Greek class and in our biblical interpretation class, and in systematic theology, that comes to have a meaning. When we learn things about like mutual forbearance and the church and its unity in our polity classes, that has a certain kind of meaning. And as we prepare to not only point out all of the citations in our Constitution and our confessions where these things are active, and then answer questions pastorally, it's surreal to sit in some of these rooms and wonder, did these people take the same ordination? Like, really, it is surreal. And Dr. Ron Peters tells the story for the past couple of graduations about his mother saying to him, I can't hear what you're saying from seeing what you're doing. I can't hear what you're saying for seeing what you're doing. And so I'll go back to ecclesia and mutual forbearance and church and its unity and that brief statement of faith, that wonderful part where in a broken and fearful world, the Spirit gives us the power to unmask idolatries in church and in the world. I mean, that's what brief statement of faith, 10-4 is where I'm just saying that this is what the Presbyterian Church USA alleges. And so I'm looking forward to the day that the church really lives into what it says that it is. I also, as a person who is partnered in a 6-year relationship to my beloved Carlos, I speak to you with a bit of privilege. I understand that because New York is my home, I can get married whenever I want to. And because New York is my home, if a few of my favorite Presbyterians who are in the room wouldn't marry me, there would be a couple of people in New York who would. But I also have to stand in solidarity with seminarians who are oppressed by their geography. They live places with hostile presbyteries. They live places, they go to school in seminaries that could be hostile environments. They go to churches that are not necessarily this opening and welcoming kind of thing. And so while I can enjoy the fact that we can get married tomorrow, that there are those who are my sisters and my brothers who are depending on this assembly to do what it says that the church is. I don't think that it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. And I hope that it's now.
I'm Will McGarvey, and I agree it needs to be now. My context is Pittsburgh, California, in the East Bay of the San Francisco Presbyterian, a state that has had marriage equality and then had it revoked. And so members of my community were able to get married during the window of opportunity, which is what they're calling it, those few months when folks were able to have services done, either in the civil ceremony or by their ministers. But in my context, in my community Presbyterian church, Pittsburgh, California, we're a UCC Presbyterian church. And that makes things a little bit more complex for us, especially being in conversation with our sister church, First Congregational Church in Antioch, who just moved in with us. And the full expectation of pastoral care is there for our folks. And so the debate for some of us, would be whether or not we would allow a service in our building, whether we would sign on to do ecclesiastical disobedience according to the way some people have been reading our Book of Order in a very prescriptive way rather than in a descriptive way. And the choice of members of my congregation to ask a UCC minister, my colleague, the Reverend Christy Parks-Ramage, to provide that level of pastoral care that some people would say I don't have the right to be able to offer to my own parishioners. And so for my session and I to be able to have a conversation to expand our definition of this ministry that we are offering, we actually put it on our brochure. We offer holy unions and weddings within our historic chapel. It used to be the main chapel at Camp Stoneman, a historic military base in our city. And we use both language for a reason, because we've had some seniors who will lose some of their Social Security benefits if they have a legal wedding. And so we offer holy unions for them so that they're able to retain all of their Social Security rights and benefits without losing that in a civil ceremony. But we've also talked quite openly about our openness, our desire to host and perform those ceremonies for any couple that comes to us. I haven't had the invitation to be able to respond to yet, but that is an openness that we've had conversations around. And in our Presbyterian context, in this setting, we talk a lot about marriage, and some people talk about marriage as if it's a sacrament, and it is a holy act that we do. But oftentimes people think that we as Presbyterian ministers, view it in a sacramental way like an Episcopal priest or a Catholic priest. And when you look at the book of worship, it's really interesting on the weddings, because the way we describe weddings as Presbyterians is the vows are done between the two individuals. And it's their vows that marry them. It's not my presence, it's not my blessing, it's actually their vows. And so it's covenant theology that we live into as Presbyterians. And it's based on their vows to one another that we can then bless and encourage the community to bless and invite their families and their congregation and their neighbors to be able to recognize that it's based on their covenant, their vows to one another, that they are in this special relationship now. And I think that's something that we need to start talking about with some of our compatriots who talk about our role as ministers as more than it is. It is a privilege for us to be able to perform ceremonies for everyone, and to be able to do the pastoral care and to walk with couples in their preparation so that we might be able to be pastors to them as a couple in this new relationship that they have from that point on, and to be able to be their pastor and to be able to have a good start with them in that way. But I think we do need to kind of reclaim that reformed definition of marriage in our ceremonies and really lift up that it's the vows of the individuals together that really defines what a marriage is. And recognizing then in our pastoral role that God is a part of that relationship.
Great. In just a moment, I'm going to invite a colleague and a friend forward, but I want you to notice some things around the table. These wonderful orange magnets are made by Sixth Presbyterian Church, and some of the good folk from Sixth are sitting right here. And they borrowed, with the permission of the Unitarian Universalist, as More Like Presbyterians has done, this wonderful expression and logo standing on the side of love. I also know that St. Mark's in Tucson did very much the same thing. And so I want to invite all of you, as you think about how do we have conversations about love and marriage and family, that's a great resource. And you have absolute permission. There's no problem with copyright. But on behalf of all of our congregations, More Like Presbyterians contacted the Unitarian Universalists to borrow their teaching materials, which are terrific, plus that standing on the side of love expression. And they'll just that you can buy banners for your church. There are persons that have done marriage work that have been extraordinary advocates. We think certainly about Jamie Spar. We think of Janet Edwards, and then Jean Southard. We have persons that brought before our church a clear and powerful witness that love is not limited by gender or race or any other human condition. And Jean, we want you to come forward, and we want to say a word of thanks to you. Jean Southard. There have been a number of Presbyterian pastors and congregations that have stood tall. They have been giants while our church has been figuring out what to do and how to stand on the side of love and how to be on the right side of history. And Jean, you have been on the right side of history, and you've been standing on the side of love for such a long time. And I wanted you to know of our gratitude. In Minneapolis, Jean and Sylvia and Bear Wright and Susan Craig spoke at a luncheon much like this. But Jean Southard, we love you, and we are grateful for you.
Thank you all. For once, I'm speechless.
At the National More Like Conference in Rochester, I saw Jean, and she came up to me and she grabbed my face and said, "Michael, I couldn't love you any more than I already do." And Jean, you embody the gospel, as do so many remarkable persons in this room. We are a church together. Lexi, please come forward. So Lexi is another giant and a pioneer, and there have been numerous attempts to start a gay-straight alliance at her school, and they were all blocked. But Lexi kept asking and moving and made it happen. We want to greet you and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm from Columbus, Indiana. It's about an hour south of Indianapolis. I go to Columbus East High School, and they've been working for quite a while, several years. There's been a couple teachers that have been trying to get a gay-straight alliance going, and they couldn't make it happen because of the technicalities of being student-led. So I have come, and I have gotten it student-led. We got it approved, right, like 2 weeks before the end of school. So, going to
did buy a brand new logo. And you see it on banners. These are bookmarks. And I realized that these may be collector's items someday because of Kindles and other kinds of things. But you can put them on your refrigerator. They would be lovely. And, these are gifts for you. And soon to be sold on eBay are our former logo. More like buttons. So make sure you have some because these are collector's items. And what we know is those clever people from Presbyterian Voices for Justice, they'll be having these in their baskets, you know, as the old buttons. As you know, National Light Presbyterians, we raise 100% of our income through church gifts and individual memberships and support from congregations all across the country and foundations as well. And there's a wonderful donor envelope that I encourage you to renew your membership. It's an annual membership, offer a mission gift. And Susan Robertson, right there, if you'll stand. Before our benediction, Susan will have a team of people to help collect those because we don't want them to get lost. So we'll make sure that'll happen. Paul Rocky, please come forward. So as you know, there are 8 states that have some form of marriage equality, and we know that in several states, marriage is on the move. The state of Washington is one of those, and Paul Rocky serves a wonderful More Light Church in Spokane, Washington, Bethany Presbyterian Church, and I wanted Paul to share his experience as a church in a state where marriage equality is moving quickly.
Greetings to you from Bethany Presbyterian in Spokane. We have been a More Light congregation, I think it's around 14 years. We are the only, for many years, I think we still are, the only member More Light congregation in the Senate of Alaska Northwest. That includes Seattle. So, one of the things you need to know about the state of Washington is, like most states, not all parts of it are created equal. The coastal area where Seattle is, Tacoma, Bellingham, you know, where the beautiful people are. That's where, you know, the sexy Microsoft and everything is. You go over the Cascades to the east and you enter into a time warp. And you enter into a place where there's real question about anything of authority on any level, except for the Republican Party. Now, I live 30 miles in Spokane from the Idaho border, and by most accounts, we're kind of like North Idaho, and you all know what that's like. So for Bethany to be the voice that we are is a very powerful voice. Now, what you need to know is that our governor, Christine Gregoire, was incredibly courageous in how she finally got to the point where she spoke and led clearly and beautifully, I believe, around the issue of marriage equality. I have 2 biological children, both of whom are gay, a son and a daughter. My daughter was asked over Memorial Day weekend by her beloved Laura if she would marry Laura. And of course I fell apart. But yeah, isn't that wonderful? Oh my God. So, but Laura has been accepted to University of Alaska Fairbanks for the Seismology Department Master's Program. And as they've been preparing to go there next fall, they've also begun to realize that a lot of the rights that we have in the state of Washington are not mirrored in Alaska. And now they're beginning to have some concerns. And the marriage thing, if they are married in Washington and so forth, you understand the complexity. In the state of Washington, one of the things that Christine Gregoire did that I think is important for all of us, and I really appreciate your wording and language around the struggle of what is our role as pastors in a wedding, and what is marriage in the Reformed tradition, And I think Christine Gregoire, a Catholic, did a very good job of parsing the difference. There are two functions that pastors serve in marriage. One is the civil function and one is the religious function. We act as an agent of the state when we do weddings, and we act as an agent of the church as well. She parsed that out and made it real clear that the state was not telling the church what they should or shouldn't do, but they were allowing room for the church if they felt that they could be supporting equal marriage to have that within their tradition. We need to have those conversations as Presbyterians a lot more than we do. Why do we marry people, right? I mean, it sounds like kind of childish questioning, but the fact of the matter is we haven't really answered that one clearly. I mean, yeah, we like to have weddings. But with marriage equality, I think one of the beautiful things that has come out of this conversation is what is that purpose and what is that function and how do we do that and why do we do that as a community? And the work that has been, the ground that has been plowed by the saints in this room is carrying weight even in the state of Washington. The trick that happened in our state, legislature voted to do it, but they said if we don't have any pushback by June 7th, it will become law. And of course the conservative evangelicals, I love them, started pushing back, and they gathered enough signatures so that the referendum would be put on the ballot in November. And it's a thumbs up or thumbs down referendum by the state to either concur with the legislature or not. You need to continue to be in prayers for the state of Washington because of the beautiful people in Seattle, it will probably pass, but we don't know that. Those of us in Spokane that are fighting mightily to try to make this pass need your prayers and your love, because we are living in a no man's land trying to help bring hope to a huge part of our population. So, the state of Washington is involved, my daughter's involved. I mean, I got a dog in this fight, you know? And I'm tired of being told by colleagues and friends of mine that it's not important. Presbyterian pastors that have just been absolutely shameful, and they've been to seminary. Please keep us in your prayers. Please keep us in your prayers. The state of Washington, we hope, will become enlightened, and we would pray for the other states in this room that there will be the same hearts within elected officials and by God in the pulpits to have the courage to do what God would have us do. Blessings upon you all, and thank you for this opportunity.
Can I just add that in California, one of the religious arguments against marriage equality is religious freedom. And it's used in a very pernicious way by the Catholic Church and even the Mormon Church. And in some ways, it's used in a way that they feel is that their religious freedom to define marriage is being abrogated, right? What Episcopals and UCC and folks in our coalition of welcoming congregations in the Bay Area have started to use is, no, it's our religious freedom that is being abrogated by Prop 8. You're not allowing us to live out the freedom of our own faith tradition and to offer the same pastoral care and public and civil rights to our parishioners. And I think that's an important aspect to our conversations that might help get us over the top of that. And one of the ways that we can do that is by becoming public with our stance to say, yes, we're going to stand on the side of love. And that's why we put our petition on the website. We're to 935 votes or people that have signed on there as elders or church members or ministers. You can do it anonymously, or you can put your name and your city and your state. And so if you haven't done it yet, put us over the top of 1,000. Go to the MLP.org website, sign the petition, and help us get over 1,000 signatures for that.
So I think I heard Nathan gasp. So a point of information, Madrona Grace Presbyterian Church is a relatively new, more like church that we want to celebrate in Seattle. So giving company, of course, to Bethany Presbyterian Church. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And Reverend Deborah P. is moving to Seattle for a short time because she's going to be the faith work director with Washington's Unite for Marriage Equality. How many persons got a call in the room or know Deborah P. from our OAB or 10A campaign? So look out, Washington, I say. Absolutely. Terrific, terrific. We would love to have more than one mic, and have like one out there and one here, sort of in Oprah fashion. But what I'd like to do is, please raise a hand if you've got a question. We'll get the mic to you, and then we'll bring it back to our panel of experts. So, questions? Questions? Okay, right here.
I'm sorry, just a quick comment to say Maryland has on the ballot in November the same thing. The legislature passed for marriage, but they have the ability for referendum, so they have gotten a signature, so we're struggling too, and hopefully we'll pass it. Great.
So, thoughts and prayers and support for the state of Maryland and their work.
In New York, where just a year ago we got marriage equality, before we got it, New York State already recognized anyone who had been legally married in other places. And in the marriage equality campaign, I met some gay guys that were married, and they said to me that there were 9,000 legally married same-gender couples in New York State, legally recognized for all New York State matters. And I was just wondering, before we passed that, so I was wondering, do we have any record of what other states might recognize so that you can come to New York and get married and go back to your state and be recognized? It's legal?
Peggy, great question. And until the Defense of Marriage Act is gone, and we have a federal marriage law, what we know is the landscape is not even for same-gender loving couples. Jean Ann.
In Maryland, our state's attorney recommended that we recognize it. I don't know that that means it is, but I wonder if there's other states like that. He made a very strong statement in support of recognizing it, and came to our church and spoke about it very convincingly.
I bet HRC has an index state by state.
So Will's just recommended to check out the Human Rights Campaign, www.hrc.org, and I'm sure freedomtomarry.org has this kind of information as well.
As someone who's been off doing other things, I hope someone who has been in on the marriage committee work could give a 2-minute précis of sense of what has happened and what you see happening.
They're still there.
So Tony has a report, and I would be grateful if all the Overture advocates for marriage equality would stand so we can greet you. The marriage Overture advocates, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
As of last night, when I left the committee, they had done table discussions, and each table had pointed out 3 different things from their discussions. Each one of them felt that the church is in pain and the church is suffering, and I think we all agree with that. They also felt that as themes came about, one of the things that they were concerned about was the lack of language between our side and the other, and I had to agree. But as I heard things today, one of the motions that has already gone to the floor, and of course now being true Presbyterians in true fashion, they're debating amendments to various aspects of it. It looks as though they're wanting another study, but a study in which each presbytery is required to be involved, and that was the motion that was going on when I left to come here. So it had not passed, and amendments were still going on.
4 years, yeah, 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
2 years for the study, and then 2 years before the report comes out.
Yeah, 4 years.
I was in there also, and the point to make to that, to clarify, is that that was the first motion that was made, and it was a matter of who got to make the first motion.
I'll just ask you to hold the marriage committee in your prayers because I feel that they've really received information from Louisville that has frightened them into a kind of paralysis. And we need to pray that they have the courage to do justice today.
We have 2 questions, Ralph and then Arthur.
My name's Ralph Carter, and I'm a member of Third Church in Rochester, New York. Probably like a number of people in this room, I've been ambiguous about marriage because growing up, marriage was definitely a patriarchal institution. And as I began to embrace, and it is, then I began to embrace feminism. And because my Birkenstocks was actually deemed an honorary lesbian, then I really began to like question the institution of marriage. And what's been really gratified is that marriage has changed in this just one generation. So to the point that my partner and I really do plan on getting married. But the point that I want to make is that never give up your power. And I think Will said it so clearly. It's the vows that you make to each other that constitutes the marriage. It's not the church that marries you. It's the church through it's the state through a legal document actually recognizes that which is already transpired, the commitment that the 2 persons have actually made to one another, and the presiding clergy person, that is the forum in which you are making that commitment public and inviting friends and community to celebrate and join you in that commitment to nurture the relationship and so forth. That is what's really going on. So it's important, I think, first of all, for us to recognize that it is our commitment. And so the other thing which comes to mind was listening to Carter Hayward, who came to Rochester and talked about the ordination of women in the Episcopal Church. And that when the church wasn't going to ordain women, they decided, well, we're going to do ecclesiastical disobedience and do it. So I'm just wondering at some point, might that be an appropriate response in our own denomination?
I'm Arthur Fullerton. I was one of the AI advocates along with our large team, and I think if this committee sends out a recommendation to the floor that we have another study, I drew the analogy to punting on first down. that we need to have a substitute motion come on the floor to pass the AI and provide relief from all of the lawsuits for our clergy in states where it is legal. Or else we're going to have 4 years of complete hell. Because people are going to go to their pastors, they are going to ask to be married, and people are going to marry them. And then folks are going to bring charges. I mean, we have people in the room that can attest to that. And we don't need to do that if we can avoid it. And I think the path is to make a motion, a substitute motion from the floor, if the committee comes with this recommendation, to go with a different way.
I was on the first marriage committee, so I'm here to tell you that the other piece is, if for some reason that does not pass, and you are given a marriage committee, someone needs to make sure that the parameters of the marriage committee are actually going to address the issue. The reason the committee that you got did not address the issue of gay marriage is that we were instructed by the General Assembly not to do so. And we were instructed by the General Assembly. And we caught a lot of flack from folk about this, but you need to know that we were instructed by the General Assembly not to deal with gay marriage and not to deal with directed abortion. So if the AI does not pass, and you are a commissioner, you've got to make enough amendments to the task force that what will be studied is what needs to be studied. Because Tony Del Rosa and I and Eric Weston and a number of folks, including some of the conservatives on that committee who were absolutely pilloried by the right wing for voting with us, absolutely pilloried, tried our best to do the best we could with that committee. But we were hamstrung by the direction of the Assembly. If you are a commissioner, hear me well.
Ralph, I think the time has come. With or without an AI, I think we need to be willing to work towards marriage equality and act now as pastors, as sessions, as if it is a reality. Because this is the only thing that helped this church get over its ban on divorce. It was ministers marrying people who were divorced despite the policy that when they realized how many ministers were performing weddings for people who had been divorced, they realized that they would totally clog the church courts if they were to bring any of them or start a process of any of them. That's why we're asking folks to come out in your support, sign the petition, let everyone know that you're not going to discriminate, that your call towards pastoral care supersedes other people's interpretation of our Constitution.
Thank you, Will. You thought it was just a luncheon. It's now a rally. It's now a rally. Ray Bonarolo is a Presbyterian minister in New York and has officiated same-gender loving ceremonies and marriages. Here's Ray. I wanted to share his story too.
Sure. Just a couple of minutes just to say a few things. When I look at Margaret and I look at others here, I want to ask you a question. Could any same-gender couple in the room that is married please stand? Legally married.
Yeah.
that's the edge of what we're leaning into. The joy of the love that is to be celebrated, not just by 3 couples standing up in a room like this, but by every couple in a room like this that wants to stand up. Margaret talked about things this morning. I don't know a Jesus Christ that doesn't take risks. I don't know how to be a Christian without taking certain risks. And we all have different risks to take in different ways, but we are on the edge, not just of this struggle, we're on the edge of the possibility. And so, in places where we can, and where it is for us the right thing to do, we cross over that line. I have experienced that kind of joy in marrying same-gender loving couples in the sanctuary of the church I serve, with the full approval and the encouragement of the session. I have done it at the Macy's Flower Show. I could have been happy to be surrounded by more flowers in Queens. I wasn't sure if I was there for me or for them, but I didn't care. But the point is that to be a pastor and to be called to serve God in the way that pastors have in their hearts, that we all find in those quiet voices we know, and to be able to perform same-gender marriages as a gay man, as a pastor, as a Christian, as a sister or brother, or a member of the congregation, there's nothing wrong with that. There is everything right with that. So there's many people that are doing this. Some of us are over the line. We'll see what that brings. But we're not doing it to be self-serving. We're doing it to move the line, as are all of us here in all of our own ways. So it's worth it. It's happening. It's changing. It's pistis in action. I just want to close by thanking Margaret for preaching the word this morning. Margaret.
I'm Jen Callahan, my wife Mary. I just wanted to say that the pastor of our church, and he, I'm sure would be good with this, is Tom Yorty at Westminster in Buffalo. And he did a lot of research, both with Scott Clark and Jamie Spar, had the session, talked to them, long distance phone calls, and had a real process that I'm sure he would be happy to share with any teaching elders or churches that would like to talk with him about that. He, in addition to the research, he sent a letter to all members, went out to every person in the congregation. Then he preached a sermon the week before, which is available online if you went to Westminster Presbyterian Church and look for the sermon of September 25th of 2011. It's got some good theological content and how he framed it for the church, and it's worth the risk.
And Jen, you and Mary are no risk at all. You are a gift and a blessing. Yes. So we do need to close, and we want to thank our panel and the Christians all around the room. The shower stoles are here. Many persons would have loved to have been a part of a moment like this. And so in this moment of quiet, we certainly want to remember all those people that made it possible for us to live in this moment. And may we be the kind of church that ushers in a new moment for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. There's a wonderful exhibit of We Have Faith, and I encourage you, these are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender persons of faith from various traditions. It's a very inspiring exhibit. It's similar to the one, same people that produce Love Makes a Family. And so you can bring these exhibits to your congregation, to your seminary campus, to your campus ministry, to your presbytery. There are educational resources just outside in the foyer. And Susan and Brenda and some others will be right at those doors to receive your offering envelopes, shall we say. And Beth Van Sickle is a member of the National Moral Lab Board and a seminary student at Louisville Seminary. And oh my God, she's local. Beth will offer our benediction.
One of the things that my mom told me when I was growing up, she said, Beth, let your conscience be your guide. And I can't do anything besides that anymore. So I ask that you go out and let love be your guide. Let the gospel of Jesus Christ be your guide. And go forth in peace.